My sexuality is gay.
I'd say lesbian.
I don't really define myself as a sexuality, but when most people hear how I explain it, they basically simplify it as bisexual.
I'm bisexual.
And I am a lesbian.
I'm pansexual, which means that I like all genders, and what a lot of people don't know is there's not just two genders. There's also agender and bigender people, and so I'm also attracted to them.
I am openly gay. I identify as a bisexual.
Yes, I have.
Yes, both of them.
Yeah.
No, I have not.
Yes.
Yes, I have.
I have both my parents now.
Okay, so what happened was at the time I was talking to this guy and he, we were getting kind of serious, and the night before I had a conversation with him and he told me that he wanted to date me, but since I wasn't out, that was kind of like a deal breaker. So I was thinking, and then I was like, okay. And so the next morning I went to my dad and I came out to him, and it was terrible because I knew I knew exactly what he was gonna say. I knew that he was gonna be totally against it and go all Mr. Godly on me because he's a Christian, which not that there's anything wrong with that, but I just kind of already knew his reaction. And so after that I went to my room and I just sat there, and then I texted a guy, and he's like, oh, well, how did he react? And I was like, exactly how I thought he would. He was a dick about it, and he's like, oh, I'm sorry, and he didn't really have any sympathy. So then I just went over to my friend's house because her family was really supportive of me, and so I just hung out there and stayed there for a while. And I didn't come out to my mom until, well, actually, I didn't even come out to my mom. My dad told her. And so this year she asked me why do I think I was gay, and I just told her because of the fact that I don't see girls sexually. I mean, I do find women very attractive, but I don't want to have sex with them. Yeah. So that's kind of what I told my mom. And my dad, I don't know, mine and his relationship has gotten better. We're good at it. We just don't agree on that aspect. So.
Well, with my mom, I told her over dinner, and she was like, okay, cool. We'll get there when we get there. If you ever date a girl, we'll get there when we get there. If you ever date a guy, whichever is cool for you. My dad and I were having an argument in the garage, and so he was shouting at me, and then I was like, well, Dad, guys and girls are both effing hot, and then stormed downstairs, and then didn't talk to him for the rest of the night. So that went well.
It was positive because my mother's the same way. So it was ninth grade, and I had a girlfriend and wanted to introduce her to my mom. So I went outside with my mom and I said, okay, not sure how you're going to take this. Please don't be mad at me, but I don't think you're going to be. But I have a girlfriend because I'm into girls. And her words were very surprising and I didn't expect it. Her reaction was, okay, so we can look at hot girls together now. Oh, okay. Sure, we can do that, Mom. We'll look at hot girls.
Well, when I first came out to my parents, I had just gotten over a relationship with a boyfriend, and that just ended terribly. And I'm like, okay, you know, what's going on? Am I lesbian? What am I? And then I found out about bisexuality, and I'm like, well, that makes sense because I like both. I can't just choose one gender. I love both equally. And so on a car ride home from Fort Collins, I finally came out to my mom and I'm like, listen, since we got a few hours to spare, here's the deal, I'm bisexual. And she cried for a little bit, but then she's like, as long as you're happy, I'm happy. And a little while later, I met Sadie.
My parents are very, very conservative Baptist Christians, and Baptists are generally against homosexuality. My parents would always talk about gay people in condescending ways and things like that. I remember my dad always saying things like, oh, I can't believe that people are doing this, it's so wrong. Like, God is just shaking his head at what the world is going through right now, and it was rough. I knew I was a lesbian probably from about age 9. I remember I was at Disney World and I saw this really pretty girl, and I remember not being able to sleep for days after that because I felt so bad, because that's what people would experience with boys that were my age. But I knew it was wrong in their respects. And so I hid who I was. I had 2 really long relationships with boys. I had one that lasted about a year and a half, and one for almost a year with boys. During that time, I went through crippling, debilitating anxiety and depression, where I had panic attacks several times a week, sometimes several a day. I had to switch to online school for my sophomore year because I couldn't function. I couldn't accept who I was. I was trying to change myself so hard, but I couldn't. And so I got to the point where I was pretty close to being done because I couldn't live with the guilt anymore of loving women and not loving men. But finally kind of had a breakthrough time where my mom came in and she asked me, are you gay? And I said, well, yes. And it was really hard from that moment on. I had to tell my dad after I told my mom. My mom was a little bit easier. She reacted a little more low-key, mellow, but my dad didn't talk to me for about 2 weeks after that. When we finally did talk, they had kind of come to the realization that that they believed that loving someone should not be a sin in God's eyes. They are still very much Christian, very conservative, but they totally accept who I am now. It just took them a little while to come around. I mean, they love Megan like she's their daughter. Like sometimes I wonder if she's their favorite daughter. Like, I don't know, they love her. And I'm finally happy. I'm finally laughing again and smiling again. I'm finally able to be who I am. And that's the most liberating thing ever, is to be content with who you are as a person.
And they were very loving and supporting, and they had known, but I had a girlfriend at the time, so when I came out to them after we broke up, they were like, oh yeah, it's okay, we knew that. Well, I had this girlfriend, and I was dating her for about a year and a half, and she had lied to me about something I held very sacred, and so I broke it off with her, and I went home, and I thought to myself, and I was like, she was the one woman I wanted to be straight for, I guess. And so I had told my mom, and I sat her down, and I was like, hey, so me and Cerise broke up, and she was like, oh, dang it, because she really liked her, so. And then I told her that I was gay, and she was like, oh, it's okay, you didn't really need to come out because I knew that you were. And I was like, oh, okay, thanks, Mom.
I think the initial reaction with telling somebody that you're a sexuality that isn't like exactly mainstream yet is that they don't know what it is, and so it's definitely like times of having to remind them, like, Mom, I like girls too, and I like other people as well. And eventually, at first, it was definitely a thing where she went to the stereotypical, like, bisexual and pansexual stereotypes of that they're just confused and it's a phase kind of sexuality, and then it went to more, you actually do have a real sexuality, and addressed it. Immediately for my mom, it was like, are you sure you want to choose that? But she stemmed away from that after a little bit, and she's been very supportive of my decisions. The final decision I came to is I don't want to personally come out to the rest of my family, besides my dad, my brother, and my mother, because they will not know what it is, and I think they'll definitely not take me seriously. And so I think if they find out or they kind of assume, then good for them. But until I date a girl, I don't really want to date somebody who's, you know, a girl or any other gender that's other than a boy. I don't want to tell them about that I'm not straight, because it's just kind of a thing I don't really talk about with them.
Because at this point I feel like they would take my liking guys as being confused. So my sexuality with them, to them, would be sometimes he likes girls, and then sometimes he's just confused. And I feel like that's what it would be, and I don't want it to be that way.